Good evening. I'm Thomas May Jr. I was born. Excuse me. Yes, dear. No, dear. No, they can't see you. No, I don't understand how this works. Maybe next time they can see you. Yes. Would you folks please say hello to Elizabeth? She's waving at you.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Thank you. I was born in Plymouth in 1814. Not Plymouth, Michigan, Plymouth, England. When I was 24, my father, mother, younger brother Nelson, and I boarded a ship and headed for the United States. When we arrived in New York City, my father decided to stay there and look for work. But I didn't want to live in a big city. Too many people, noisy, so dirty. So I headed north on the Hudson River. I found a small town by the name of Putnam on the shores of Lake Champlain. I got a job working in a store there, and you meet a lot of people working in the store coming in all the time. So after a while, I met this young girl, so beautiful, Elizabeth Shear. Well, after a while, we fell in love, and we were married in January of 1840. That fall, we welcomed our first child, a little girl by the name of Jenny. Now, while I was working at the store, talking to people, occasionally I would hear about a fairly new state called Michigan out in the west. And I wanted to open up my own store. So I thought maybe that would be a good place to go get established. So I contacted my father and I asked him if they wanted to come with us. Well, they did. We went west on the Erie Canal to Lake Erie, got on a boat, came to Detroit. Again, another city. So I started asking around, where would be a small village or town in the general area that we could settle down and I could establish my store? Well, when I heard the name Plymouth, that was where we were going to go. We came here, we got a house, and I started my store. Now, my store was on the north end of the main block in town. On the south end of that block was a hotel, and in between was a general store, a post office, a jewelry store, a tailor, a drugstore, 2 shoe stores, and 2 other dry goods stores. Very busy little town. Well, running a store is not a really exciting career, and I didn't look to become famous or anything. I didn't get into politics. So rather than talk about me, I would like to talk about some of the events that everybody in this area experienced during my lifetime. One of those was very beneficial to us. In 1850, they started building the Plymouth Plank Road from here to Detroit. Now this was much better because, number one, we didn't have to worry about getting stuck in the mud every spring. And it was a lot faster. Another time I remember, in fact, I remember the exact date. It was May 5th of 1856. 2 events happened that very same day. Number one, we had a circus come to town. They came in and set up a great big tent right in the middle of Plymouth Green. Oh, you know it today as Kellogg Park. See, back then there were no trees there. It was a natural clearing. So they set up this big tent, all kinds of acts, all kinds of wild animals. They had 2 shows that day. People from all over the area came into town. We were very busy. We even saw an elephant. I'd only seen a drawing of an elephant before. I actually got to touch it. Well, that evening there were still a lot of people in town. And somehow a whale oil lamp got knocked over in the hotel and started a fire. Well, the alarm went out. We all rushed back to Conquest Creek right behind the hotel. Got our buckets. The fire got ahead of us. We couldn't put it out that way. So we ran around and we started taking all of the merchandise out of the stores to try to save it. We took it across the street into the park. Meanwhile, the people from the circus, they're over in the park trying to get the animals out of the park. Imagine trying to control an elephant that's trying to get away from a fire and is scared. Mass confusion in town that night. Well, the fire's still burning. How are we going to get it out? If we don't get it out, we may lose the whole village. Somebody said, let's tear down one of the buildings and make a fire stop. You see, my store on one end of the block was all built out of brick. All of the other buildings on the block were built out of wood. So we actually went in and we actually tore down one of the stores right next to my building. And the fire stopped right there. Well, for a while we just felt devastated. This huge fire wiped out most of the middle part of town. You know, we were pioneers. We were very resilient. So we rebuilt the block and we named it the Phoenix Block after the bird that rose from the ashes. Very turbulent time in our country's history, 1850s going into 1860. All this talk of abolitionism and slavery and that. Mr. Lincoln was running for president in 1860, and of course we were almost all abolitionists in this area. This was one of the key areas on the Underground Railroad prior to that time where the escaped slaves came through. So Mr. Lincoln had a lot of support. In fact, I remember a great big banner on one of the houses that said Lincoln and Hamlin, great big letters. I think it was George Starkweather's house. Well, Mr. Lincoln won the election, and a few months later the war started. The next year, in 1862, in August, I remember right across the street from my store, they had a big rally. The 24th Michigan was looking for 100 men to make up Company C. Well, they got their 100 men, and one of those men was my brother, Nelson. He marched off to war. Well, about a month later, Nelson came home. He was discharged because of acute nephritis. That's inflammation of the kidneys. We didn't know it at the time, but later on he told us that he'd been suffering for quite a while. But he wanted to do his duty, so he didn't say anything to anybody. We counted it as a blessing later on because the next year, the 24th Michigan was almost completely wiped out at a place called Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Well, 2 years later after that, before the war finally ended, peace was coming back. We were so excited. We were so happy. There were parades. There were fireworks. There were bands. Bang! Mr. Lincoln was killed. How are we going to go on? We have no leader. Are the Confederates going to start the war again? Will peace ever come back to our country? These are questions that people were asking in town. Well, peace did come back. And Plymouth prospered. A few years later, in 1871, a few of the businessmen got together and petitioned to get a railroad through here. Well, they did such a good job. They wound up with 2. Well, I don't know a whole lot after that because I passed away in 1874. So it's time for me to say farewell and take my wife for a walk. Good evening. Come along,